But just to keep things moving fast, I'm going to invite Ken Ray to Columbus to present and to help us solve all of our transportation problems throughout the state of Indiana. Hi, Ken. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And it's great to be a part of this group. I know many of my colleagues, myself, we've done stuff with the Mayor's Institute before. And, you know, from that 2019 class, our firm's actually been working with Bentonville, Arkansas and Salisbury, Maryland since then. So, you know, I know every year it's one of those things where, you know, we're always happy to help cities and towns of all different sizes. And, you know, our big thing is making great streets, to be honest about it. And, you know, we're moving beyond complete streets. You know, that's kind of the word and the catchphrase that people use. But as Layla can attest, if I or any of my colleagues show up in your town, we're going to focus on removing one-ways. We're going to be focusing on walkability and really making the public realm a place for people and not just cars. So about me, I'm a landscape architect by education, but, you know, I'm a big cyclist. You know, I'm, you know, into a lot of what I talk about. But again, it all comes down to designing great streets. I won't go too much into my past, but, you know, it's really about making the public realm and making the public spaces successful and vibrant and bringing vibrancy back into communities and really creating places and spaces for people, which is what everyone's been saying already and what the mayors have said they're wanting for their downtowns. Our company, I'm not going to go into that too much, just we're engineers, planners, landscape architects. We write a lot of the guidelines and work all over the country, really imagining what can be and then getting it built at all different scales. And we do this, like I said, all over the place. And really it's about making streets what we would consider the 21st century. So it's, again, not about cars, it's about pedestrians, it's about retail environment. It's also about stormwater and utilities and being better stewards, you know, for the environment as well. And just 4 things I was going to touch on today, just really, really fast. You know, it's designing for people, integrating that green infrastructure in your streets. I've got a few design tips, and then I've always got to do a plug for bikes and peds. For designing for people, it's really about balancing the getting somewhere with being somewhere. And so I just got your list of towns. I did some Google searches as well, and I picked 3 projects that kind of came to mind that kind of fit some of the things. One of the easy ones was South Bend, Indiana. Many of you are probably familiar with it. We actually were hired to go there right when Mayor Pete was elected. And when we got there, the picture in the bottom left there was basically what their downtown Main Street looked like. We've worked with them for a few years getting their downtown master plan together. You see on the right, where we 2-wayed all their one-way streets, and they did road diets and different things to, you know, humanize those streets so that streets that were like this before could be transformed to be, again, for people. It's got bike and pedestrian facilities. You know, it's a calmer street for cars and safer for cars as well. And then, as you can see, the reinvestment came back into their downtown. And so if you go there today, it's a much different place 10 years later than what it was when we first got there. And they've just continued to grow the plan as developments come along. Another town's a small town in Sulphur Springs, Texas. That's a couple hours outside of Dallas. When we got there, the picture on the left was their Main Street, and the upper right is the way it looks today. That was the first project we did there. We've been going back to Sulphur Springs about every year or two to do different projects for them. And one that was always bugging us was their square around the courthouse that you see in the bottom right. And they had a one-way couplet that went through their downtown. And as I mentioned, we don't really go to a town unless we remove their one-ways. So we did a quick plan, we did a SketchUp model, we did some concepts, and they built it. And so they restored those streets to be 2-way. And we've got lots of tricks. It's not an easy thing. It's not a snap of the fingers, but we've been around the block, and so we've got several tricks of making one-ways to 2-ways and making great places. And so this Plaza Court Square area that you're seeing, there's no curbs. There's the little parking blocks, but it's a curbless place, so that when you have events and things there, they can shut the whole thing down and have events there. And so this town that was dead, literally, when we got going there, gosh, again, it's probably 10, 12 years ago when we first started working there, they have over 300 events a year. And it became a place where people didn't say, oh, what do you want to do tonight? Or should we go downtown? They knew if they went to the downtown square, something was happening. So they didn't have to question it. And so that main street that was empty, as you saw in that after picture, filled up with restaurants, filled up with new stores and retail, and this place is hopping lots of most of the nights of the year, and it's become a destination for people even in like places like Dallas to go to on the weekend, go to on a Friday night, to not have to deal with Dallas or Fort Worth traffic or anything to actually enjoy Sulphur Springs. Another one, and this was just based on seeing the square there in Shelbyville, a little place called Carrollton, Georgia, where there was a square called Adamson Square. And, it's another one where, you're doing a lot with a square. Been to Franklin, Tennessee, and done different things there. Racine, Wisconsin's another one that's got a funky downtown square. But we came in, looked at it, did a quick plan for them. It hasn't been built yet, but we've been still working with them. And here we kind of blew the trees off. It's one of those things where you do a nice plan, you see a lot of green. The images on the left kind of show the transportation functions with the street coming in, how we redesigned it. And just the big idea was reimagining the corners as rooms. And so things like beer gardens, having outdoor dining, things like that, would have been, I wish they had built it, 3 years ago when we drew this. They've been getting funding because now in COVID, this would have been perfect to have this much outdoor space next to their square, to be able to have, during this time for outdoor dining and activities. But either way, it's still the vision, the town's still pushing for it, and it's something to strive for. So again, it's just one of those things of investing in that public realm and not just giving everything necessary to the cars in these places. Again, green infrastructure, most places are already doing this. We integrate it into most of our projects just because it's an extra funding source that you can also get. And it just helps your infrastructure. A lot of places have dated infrastructure, and stormwater, as far as having something that can reduce the impact of that with projects always seems to help. So we always encourage that and just sell it because it's also an economic thing. A lot of our master plans, we try to at least show how the environmental impacts also are money-making things for the city itself. Again, this is a project we did up in St. Paul, Minnesota. I've seen this graphic a couple of times, called the Capital City Bikeway, where we actually did a road diet and reallocated 2 lanes of travel lanes to be a wider sidewalk, had the bike facility, but then all of that bike facility and the swales along it are porous, so that all the stormwater actually is collected there. They actually have much less pervious space there, or impervious space, sorry, along their streets now. And so they didn't actually have to upgrade their utilities. Everything was able to be done with the existing infrastructure. Again, just my tips. This is a fortune cookie I got one time on a charrette, and it said, make decisions from your heart and use your head to make it. And so, that's one of those things, like, get the vision and stick with it and keep the end goal in mind. So this is that Jackson Street project where a simple cross-section sketch, as you start to work through the graphics and work with the community, can come to fruition. But it's keeping that goal in mind and living with it. Making streets flexible. As I mentioned, that project in Sulphur Springs was flush. Worked on the project in Orlando, Florida, where we made the streets around the Amway Center, their basketball arena, flush. You've got a great example in Indianapolis with Georgia Street, where there's no curbs. So again, it opens the flexibility up so that you can do more. And then the example on the right is Clematis Street down in West Palm Beach. That street just got rebuilt. And again, it was fortuitous on their part because this street had curbs before. Now with COVID, they moved all their dining out, and people can just walk freely and eat outdoors without any kind of ADA issues or things like that. And then the last thing, and it's almost the canary in a coal mine of walkability. If you can make the place walkable, then ultimately it'll be a success for everyone else. And so these are 3 examples in Florida that we worked on over the years. And as you do projects, you learn things from them and you kind of build upon it. So things like the width of the sidewalk, the width of the dining zone, where you put the furnishing and the trees, and we've pretty much become experts at laying these streets out and again, making them for people and accommodating the cars, but making sure that the people and walking is the #1 design driver of our designs. And then lastly, like I said, you kind of have to start with the bikes and peds. And as a landscape architect, I always just say, we have to get them in our concepts early so they're not left out. And trees are kind of the same way, making sure that we put in those flashy graphics, all the users that we want to be in there. This is an example in, the one previous was in Omaha, Nebraska. This is one up in New York. I worked at AECOM before coming to Tool and worked on this project when I was there, and the before and after match. And so we wanted that vision, and the people, this is over in Brooklyn, they held our feet to the fire that they wanted that space that we conceptualized and got it built. And you can see the same things in projects like this in Boulder, or even the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, that James just mentioned. Having the bikes, having the landscape, having all those facilities in there made it a selling point, and also ended up making a success for the project. So with that, thanks. Like I said, it's really great to be on this, and I'm excited for what the next 2 weeks bring.